Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. Today is going to be a lot of fun. One of my favorite topics, I have to say. I often get to go back to my roots, so to speak, since I've retired. But do we ever really retire? I don't know. I love it regardless. Anyway, spirit communication goes back to ancient times. People don't realize how far back it actually goes, but they've always been captivated by death and what lies on the other side. Attempts to contact the dead in order to obtain knowledge was quite commonplace in a lot of ancient cultures that way back thousands of years, exploded during the spiritual movement of the Victorian age. Of course, the Victorians were all about having a good time and they loved the obscure. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I've read the book. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, it has grown into this phenomenon that we are actually experiencing even to this day. Nothing has changed. People are still curious and they want to get a better understanding about it. So today's guest, of course, is Sterling Moon. She has communicated with spirits since childhood and began officially practicing mediumship in 2016. Very well-versed lady, teaches through her school, Sterling Moon Divination Academy, is a longtime instructor at the Ritual Craft School, and she's giving us a comprehensive look into spirit communication. She's going to be talking about her book, Llewellyn's Littlest Book of Spirit Communication. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and I see the chat room is already starting. Hello, Heidi. Hi, Wayne. Waiting for everybody to come in. Not going to want to miss this one. So without further ado, the lovely Sterling Moon. Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to everybody who's joining us.
We have a lot of audio listeners as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure that we put up and vocalize sterlingmoontarot.com for anybody who wants to find out more about this lovely lady. So we'll leave that up for a little bit. I like to start off with kind of humble beginnings because some of us who have mediumship acquire it through many ways. I mean, I personally believe we're all born with it, and then it kind of goes dormant for a while for some. Others claim, "Oh, I've never had it." I don't know. I've been seeing dead people since I was probably out of the crib. But anyhow, how did it begin for you?
Oh my goodness. Well, my mom would say that she started having experiences when she was pregnant with me. And
Oh,
my mom is sensitive as well. It seems like it runs in our family, but I'm sure for a lot of folks who are listening, I think that these gifts do run in families, but sometimes it can get funneled into maybe our into more acceptable religious beliefs. I think many of us who are mediums we have grandmas and grandpas and great aunties and things like that where they're like, no, I got like a direct pipeline to like God or Mother Mary or something like that.
mhm.
And then a few generations where maybe that shifts, it looks a little different. But yeah, my mom remembers having experiences when she was pregnant with me. I remember like my first experience of hearing what I think was a spirit was like I was 4,
Wow.
but I love that you brought up that those skills, they do kind of go dormant for a little bit for a lot of us as we're coming into who we are. And so I would have a lot of like what I like to refer to as like psychic popcorn moments. Of
I like
course, I
that.
would always, pick up on things in hotels and kind of like the classic places that we all do. And I really, though, it was after I had my son, and that was where I was really tired. I was really
Yeah,
tired. I'm a new parent.
yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm picking up on things left and right that I shouldn't know, and I'm finding out are true, and I feel like it was a spiritual awakening, but not in a pretty way. It was kind of like bring you to your knees. What the heck is going on for me? And so that really is where the rubber hit the road for me.
Wow. So you just kind of went through this quiet stage for a little bit and then
Mhm.
it went crazy.
Much like I think a lot of people who find themselves on an unconventional spiritual journey, the puzzle pieces start getting put in place before you need them. And so I had just happened to connect with a spiritual teacher. I was in a mystery school called Lapis Moon. And so I had supports that I didn't know I was going to need. And thank goodness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just I always joke that it felt like my spiritual gifts just, it was like a watermelon got dropped on pavement. And so
That's so funny because I don't think people realize how mediumship can evolve or how we all have it doesn't work the same for everyone.
yes.
Like I remember just being able to do things a certain way and you adapt to it. You get used to that. And then I
Uh-huh.
remember being in Lilydale, as I have, friends who live there. So I
Yeah.
would try to go often. And um, John Edwards was there. And
Oh,
I know he's just lovely. And anyway, so we were talking about it and I said, "Well, I like going back this way." But something along the line for me shifted and I couldn't get back. And he looked at me and goes, "You can't go back." What? What do you mean? It's just like, "No, you're supposed to evolve, but I like that way." It doesn't matter.
tough.
All
It
right,
doesn't
all right.
matter.
Yeah, cool it.
Mm.
I'll
Oh
do
my
it your
gosh.
way,
Yeah. The not being
right?
able to go back to the way you do it. That is, I feel that on so many layers,
Thank you.
levels.
Thank you,
Mhm.
because I was starting to think like something had broken in me, just like yeah, it was a
Yeah.
bad time.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, because you're just learning things all over again, and you're just like, "Well, I'm not sure I understand that." Just
Uh, I always like to joke that, or say that, spirits have jokes and the universe has a lot of jokes and the universe will keep you humble. That is one thing. Like, don't, I feel like I teach mediumship and
Yes.
work with a lot of clients. And I will say to all of them, to everyone, I feel like mediumship every single day, every single time, it's like an ego death because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The way that spirits will come through, it's not the same every time. And the only way that you have a chance of doing this work with integrity is if you try to keep your ego in the back seat.
Mhm.
And because I feel like that's the downfall of, historically and in modern times, ego is the downfall of people in this work.
You are not wrong, and thank you for talking about that because I think sometimes it gets the better of most, and there's really gifted people out there
Yeah.
who could be doing a lot of really good things, like
Mhm.
yourself. You've devoted a good part of your life, your professional life is essentially helping other people right now, s
Yeah.
right? So what
Yep.
made you decide to go that direction
Oh
instead
boy.
of instead of just saying, "No, I'm going to do whatever clearings, I'm gonna work within this field or that field," or, a dear friend of mine, she finds missing children, one of the most gifted
Yeah.
people I know, and she's found over 300 just by herself.
Oh my goodness.
Just brilliant, brilliant.
Uh, I much like I just described, I felt like I have been kind of drop kicked into where I am, and, at one point I said, I there's one of the jokes of my life is that every time I say, "I would never," I would never fill in the blank. That is usually what I end up doing in a really funny way. And so I never expected to be doing this work. I spent 20 years as a professional advocate for victims and survivors of crime. I have a master's degree in advocacy and political leadership. I grew up in a pretty violent, not pretty, I grew up in a quite violent environment. And I really developed a passion for wanting to support particularly women and kids who were experiencing violence, because I still believe to my core that if that didn't occur, the world would fundamentally change. And so that led decades of activism and advocacy. I'm still really involved in my community. And I did a lot of political work. I've interned on US Senate campaigns. Like I've done,
Wow, look at
and
you
so in the
go.
it was, I mean, it was a calling and I really loved it. And I started to notice over time, the places that I was finding myself working didn't have, maybe like we weren't doing the level of work that I would have hoped that we would be doing. And in the midst of all of this, I had been quietly reading tarot cards since I was 15. I started reading tarot in 1995 and quietly adopted the name Sterling Moon because heaven forbid
Yes.
anyone in my 9 to 5 knew what I was doing.
Yes.
And
You weirdo, you.
you weirdo, you. And I ended up getting quietly hired as a shop reader at a little metaphysical shop called Ritual Craft that has continued to just grow leaps and bounds. And so by the time 2022 rolled around, I was just absolutely broken in the work that I thought was going to be my life's work. I mean, I was like, I wanted to be a nonprofit executive director. I had what I thought was this really clear life path. And I was so miserable, and I felt like the biggest impact of the work that I was doing was sitting with people and sitting that with them when they're, because people bring real stuff to their tarot readings, or they seek out spell work, practice spell work for real stuff. And I'm getting all like a little emotional saying this. And mediumship, I mean, when you can support someone who gets an answer that they've needed and then they can verify it, and then finally I was so unhappy, and I'll never forget, I've met a lot of some of my best friends in this work on Instagram, and I posted in my my close friends stories, does anyone have any support for leaving a toxic workplace? And story after story after story from particularly women were like, yeah, girl. And then finally they were just, I everybody kept saying, why don't you just do this full time? You could do this. And then one of my friends said, hey, could I call you later? And she said, why don't you come share an office with me? And I gave my notice that day. And it's been almost 4 years of doing this work full time. And
Wow.
thank
Congratulations.
you so much. So yeah,
Yeah.
this was never the plan. I had to get completely, for anybody who's a tarot reader out there, I had to have a full tower moment where everything that I thought was real and true got crumbled to the ground. And then that's when I got my star moment, which is the card that follows, where you get the help and the hope and the inspiration and things start getting better.
Wow. So, yeah, you've had to go through the process. But
Yeah.
but it's like, you know, the universe, like you say, has this sense of humor and has a way of keeping you in check. And it keeps making things harder for you
Mhm.
until you switch gears.
Mhm.
And then as you slowly start switching gears, or every time you come to that crossroad and you make the right choice for your path, things get easier. And it's like, oh, I see
Oh,
what you did
okay.
there. Yeah, I see what you did
And
there.
could we listen a little sooner? Could I
Yeah.
have paid attention? Absolutely, but I don't know
Yeah.
about you. I don't know about y'all out there, but I'm
Yeah.
stubborn.
That's right.
Stubborn.
Certainly some people just don't like change. So
Oh, I'm raising for those who are
yeah.
listening to the audio, I'm raising both of my hands and shaking them. So,
Yeah. That's
yes,
too
amen.
funny. It is too funny. So what made you decide to write this book specifically?
Well, I wish I had a wonderful, fantastic story, but the reality is that I was invited to. And so my first book was called Talking to Spirits: A Modern Medium's Practical Advice for Spirit Communication. I do believe really firmly in kind of kitchen table approaches. You can make this work as complicated as you want to, and you don't have to. And so, because I have kind of a non-fussy approach to this work, and it's fairly well-rounded because I love
Yeah.
traditional psychic development and mediumship practices. I'm a folk magician, and also I really love the paranormal. Like I love the gadgets and the experiments and the tools and
You
the
spent
research.
20 years in it. Yeah.
Yes, you get it, you get
Yeah,
it, and
me
so I
too.
think because of all of that, thank you, Amy Glazer with, Llewellyn, they invited me to write what is, I think this little book is the 20th or 21st book in their little book series,
And there
and
she is. Let me
so
just take down the there we go.
yay!
There
So
we are.
one thing that I
Woohoo.
will say with this, for anyone who is familiar with Raymond Buckland's Big Book of Spirit Communication, yes,
Yes,
I
Mr.
love that
Buckland.
book.
Yes.
Uh, when we were deciding, because these little books, they all kind of look pretty similar, but they said, "Is there a color?" And I said, "Could it please be red as a nod to the big book?" So
Yes.
there's a red big book, and then
It's for
a
you,
little red
Raymond. Yeah.
book.
I love it. I love that. So, and I can only imagine it's been well received, because after reading it, it's just, I think even for those who know a lot, there's something in here for everyone, from
Thank you,
anywhere from the novice to, the professional, basically. And
thank
there are
you.
such thing as professional spirit communicators.
Mhm. you're talking, I think, to two of them right here. So
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer in it, on many different levels because, my grandfather, who had been gone for 25 years,
Mhm.
set me on the path to a whole finding out of lineages and crazy stuff that I just sat back and went, "Wow," that had been validated many, many times, and because I'm a researcher at heart, so I cross-validate everything or,
Yes.
I would just go have spirit paintings done, and then I would go and, with trusted friends, I would go get this reading and, you know, it all jived, it was all the same, so I am a huge believer in it, but I think some people get themselves into trouble, and you cover all of that. So we'll start, getting into the basics, as you say. For me, this is a tale as old as time. I feel like I'm in the Beauty and the Beast movie cartoon, but it is. It's a tale as old as time. How far back, were you able to trace this?
Oh, goodness. So I had to stop myself because, you can get so into the weeds and it can be really intimidating because, I mean, and also too, it depends on the lens that you're taking, right? Like if you want to take frankly, like a biblical lens, there's spirit communication that goes through that lens. If you want to look back into like ancient Persia, or if you want to look at like Greek mythology, so it really, I think I'm not going to say impossible, but for me, it was so daunting to think of like, how far back do we go and what's
Yeah.
the angle? And so for me, I had to really, I just, I feel like as an author, it's also good to kind of like stick with what you know while also finding your edge of where you can push yourself further. And
Mhm.
so, one of the things, because I wanted this book to be accessible to anyone, one, this is it's a little guy. It's a little book. It's only 35,000 words. And so
Yeah.
that ended up being surprisingly challenging because you had to I can just blah 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 blah, but to distill it down,
Mm.
that offered a challenge. And I also wanted to be mindful that this could be the first book that maybe like, like a teenager who's interested in this might pick up.
Mm.
And also too, knowing people come to spirit communication because through grief and loss, I talk about this in the book. There's kind of the four paths of spirit communicate, or four paths to spirit communication. So there's people who come to it through grief and loss. There's people who come to it because of their interest in the paranormal. There's folks who are what I call natural mediums, where we couldn't avoid the presence of spirits if we tried. And then there's magical explorers. And so where I landed on was the really interesting rise of spiritualism, psychical research
Mhm.
societies, and occult societies in Victorian times, because there was this really interesting trifecta. And I think there's also a lot of really interesting power, class, and gender dynamics that you can pick apart. And I think that those are worth continuing to pick apart, because I think that there's some things that maybe documented in a less kind way than they should have been. I talk about that a lot in chapter 2.
Mhm.
And so that's where I chose to start, while also acknowledging, like you said, this is a tale as old as time.
Yes, absolutely it is. And you talk about, 3 kinds of mediumship.
Yes.
Do you wanna talk about those?
Oh, absolutely. So there
Excellent.
are I feel like we don't hear as much about physical mediums anymore, even though
Yeah.
do you know people who, like, they show up at a spot and, like, doors start slamming and things start moving? Like, do you have people like
Oh,
that?
like full on psychokinesis stuff,
Yes. Do you have
right?
people where there's something about them that, like, trigger that kind of reaction from spirits?
Yeah, I do know some people who do that. I don't know to I mean, I say to the extreme, I probably come across more people been asked to help more
Yeah.
so than the people who have come in to help them who could full on do that stuff.
Yeah, so there's like the physical, thank you. I'm always curious because there's the physical mediums, which was something that you saw a lot, and there was so much fraud. Like, there was so much fraud during, like,
The
in the Victorian
charlatans.
times. The
Yeah.
charlatans. And
Yeah.
so when I say physical mediumship, that is where there is some kind of physical activity. So there's table
Mm.
tipping, there's knockings and rappings, which the Fox sisters were famous
Yeah.
for.
Table tipping's easy though. I c table tip.
You could table tip. Although at the same time, what do you think? Can we take us a hot sidebar? And I promise then I'll answer your
We can talk,
question.
it's your show. You can talk about whatever you
Oh
want.
my God. So what do you
So,
think though about like the video that's out there of like the Philip experiment, where they were able, because like the table tipping that was done there,
yeah.
that I find that rather compelling.
I find that amazing. The Philip
Yeah.
experiment was something that it proves manifestation on different levels because Philip didn't exist. But what was interesting is when a medium came around and said, "I'm picking up someone named Philip." It's just like how well manifested was that? Because that's what they did, and they got the activity was amazing. I always get funky with the activity because I've been able to table tip is easy, like,
Mhm.
but I've done it in locations, not just by myself, but, with another at least maybe just one other person. You know
Yeah.
those old restaurant tables with the cast iron base? They're
Yes.
heavy, okay?
Yeah.
And this whole table went over on its side, and I just sat there, and I lifted my hands, and I kinda went, "Oh," it's like, "Okay," and I'm
This
looking under it because 'cause I'm at a
Yes.
location. I'm looking under it, my feet are going because I don't wanna kill the momentum, and I'm just
Yeah.
trying to find something. And then a photo was captured of me, which is something else you talk about in the book, where the spirit that had come in was like my face had been completely transformed. A young
Uh-huh.
man beside me, his face was completely transformed. He was like 20 years old, this guy, and it was the 50 something, 60 something year old man who had lived in that house before. It was insane. A photo
That
was
is
captured
wild.
with a non-human entity standing right behind me.
Oh
And
my
a
goodness.
a child who had been in the forum had walked up beside me, which I did not expect, and then I felt that thing come in, and I kinda grabbed him and tucked him into me at that point because of and you see
Yeah.
this thing and you can see this thing in the back. It's got these little horns, it's crazy, and I just tucked and pulled him in, and that this table had been doing things I've seen 12-foot tables shift like this.
Yes. So I'm gonna this is where my brain tends to go a million miles a minute. So for those who are listening, who are saying, "What the heck are they talking about? Who's Philip? How does this deal with
Yeah.
physical mediumship?" Okay, so the Philip experiment was this group of psychical researchers in Toronto in 1972, and they were just a bunch of like self-described normal folks who didn't have mediumship experience, who were like, "We want to see if we can manifest an apparition." That was their original goal. If you can ever find a copy of the book Conjuring Up Philip, and it's like a
Yeah.
reasonable price, get a copy. It's pretty hard to find. And it's so, so good. But they would sit in meditation for 2 hours. I think they did that every week for a year with no results. And then they decided to start bringing in like spiritualists, like they started working in seance and sitting around a table, hands, flat, pinky to pinky, and
Yep.
they completely fabricated this fictitious man named Philip
Named
that
Philip.
and named Philip, and they never conjured the apparition, but they were
Yeah.
able to like there was table tipping, there was like knocking and rapping and things like that. And they always had witnesses and they recorded those sessions and you can find them on YouTube. And so the reason that I brought this up with physical mediumship is because that's the hallmark of physical mediumship is that there are physical manifestations. Now, back in the day, there would be mediums that would say that they could emit ectoplasm. Oftentimes that was found to be chewed up
And
paper and cheesecloth that they're
yeah,
puking up in sessions.
yeah. I have to say though, what's impressive about that, if you look at old photographs of
Uh-huh.
that ectoplasm where they're climbing up or they're in these obscure do you know how long it would take to take a photo back in the 1800s?
True. That is
You would
true.
have to sit there for quite a while. So, did it sit in manifestation or was it like you say?
There's no real way to know at this point. So
Yeah,
that's one kind of mediumship. There is
yeah.
also trance mediumship, which that is, I feel like most of us, we have to utilize a light trance that kind of allows you to become a channel. Now, I have some friends that are what I call full trance mediums, where they just go bye bye and they disappear. Their consciousness goes to the back seat. Suddenly they're talking in a voice that isn't theirs.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they have to have, help coming out of it. So, for those who are fans of maybe Hans Holzer's old
Mm.
work, Hans
Yes, yes.
Holzer, he was like the
The
celebrity,
temple.
Yeah, and so Ethel Johnson Myers and
Yeah.
Sybil Leek were some of the famous trance mediums that he worked with, and they had to have somebody kind of help them out, but they would just disappear, and they would just become literally that hollow channel for the spirit to come through. And then
Mhm.
there's what most of us do, I think, which is mental mediumship, where we don't see. Ooh, that's a good question. Can I get
Yeah,
distracted?
no, go I
So
know it's a squirrel moment.
Hillbilly Herb says,
Yeah.
"Strange that we don't see ectoplasm in modern photos, or do we?" Ooh, what do you think, Michelle?
I've never seen it in modern photos, but then I'm not really, like, looking for it a whole lot. I don't do, I stopped doing physical, um, investigations because I deal with more malevolent things, and I pretty much
Yeah.
know what to look for. I don't go communicating with things that are causing harm to the family. They want it out.
Mhm.
And you know what to look for after a couple of decades in, right? But I could tell you my one experience with it, and Sterling, I'd be really curious to see what you think.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
at a location at one time, and there was, I don't know, there was, it looked like a sugar substance, and it had a, like a 3 clawed print in it, and I'm
Mm.
thinking, "Alright, I don't," again, I'm at a location, family home, and I don't know what's been done before I arrived, blah, blah, blah. They
Yeah.
had put something over it so I could see it, like a big, glass, one of those big glass bell things, what do you
Yeah.
call those? The big
Like a
cover,
dome,
glass
like a
cover.
glass dome
Yeah,
kind of
dome,
thing?
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was like an icing sugar sort of thing. I guess they had a group there who tried to do experiments, and this is what they apparently woke up to. Um, so I don't know, but when I touched it, it wasn't sugar anymore. It was slimy. And then it went clear. It crystallized. And of course, me being me, what is it? A good thing it didn't kill me, but anyway,
Oh my goodness.
and they swore up and down, were like, "No, like, this was the experiment," but in that spot, after I saw it, I walked away, and I just started doing a walk around, and I came back, and the family was with me, and that's what had happened to it.
Wow.
So
That's really interesting.
this location was notorious for it. I mean, I filmed an episode at the time, it was ET version, ET Canada at the time. So ET Entertainment Tonight. And the whole family, they were with me. There was 3 of them, like people with me. And the whole place, there was no power on in the house. Nothing. I said, leave it alone. It's winterized. Just leave it alone. Things are going to happen. And we came into the one washroom and which I had been at when I did a walkabout by myself earlier, and it was water everywhere, everywhere. It was just, and then the sound system in the whole house went on. It was an old mansion, but it was a restaurant for a while, so the built-in sound system was there. The whole thing went up, music, and the owner just held up the, the the power cord. It was just like, I was like,
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
so it is. So when you see something like the ectoplasm, which I'm thinking it could be, because
Yeah.
when you see it, it looks like kind of like spider webs when people catch it in photos and such, right? Kind
Yeah.
of that crystallization. What do you do? Do you kind of go, it's a thing? That I knew because I knew how I left it. I knew who was with me and I knew there was no one
Yeah.
else there. And that's what I came back to. Is that ectoplasm or is that
That I mean, that sounds like all the stories of it, and I think it's hard too because it's like, where do you even like, who do you send that stuff to anymore? Like, there's nowhere that you could like I wouldn't have the foggiest idea of who I could call in to say, "Who can test this? Who could look at this? Who could, like, dig into it?" I wouldn't even know what to do.
I know. I left it. We've got photos of it, and then they just cleaned it up.
Oh
Clean it up.
my
I'd have left it there forever.
gosh, that isn't that so I guess
Ugh,
so, Hillbilly Herb or whoever it was that said
yeah,
apparently the ectoplasm is still a thing, it's just you gotta
yeah,
like, you just never know when you're gonna find it.
I guess.
Yeah, and so the last I guess I should probably finish up my thoughts. So the last type of it's gonna be mental mediumship, where that's
Yeah,
like those messages that come through those psychic senses through the mind. I think that our physical like normal, five primary senses they kick off to, the chills and the things that we hear and see and can taste and smell.
Mm.
And so that's those are the types of mediumship that seem to be out there.
Yeah, and I think most people can relate to, I agree, with the mental mediumship.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the clairs, the
Yeah.
clairs,
The
the
first time I
sisters.
Oh gosh, the first time I ever heard the Claires, I'm like, "Who's Claire?" Like, it's just kind of a funny
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah,
I don't speak French, but I know enough to know that Claire is like it's the root of all these words, and it means clear in French, or claris in Latin.
yes.
And so clairvoyance is the one that most of us are familiar with, and that's been documented since like the Victorian spiritualist times. And that is clear inner sight. And so that's going to be very similar to the experience that if you have a very active imagination, and when you read a novel and your brain really, kind of makes that come to life on the inside, I feel like that's how clairvoyance can often feel, is just getting this like image or like a little movie reel that's playing in your mind.
Mm,
That's really similar to clairaudience, which is the clear inner hearing. And so the feeling of that is how, when you have a song stuck in your head or you're replaying a conversation in your mind, all clairs matter. All clairs matter. Um,
yes.
we have clairsentience, which is clear feeling. And so sometimes that's going to be both emotional stuff, feeling feelings that aren't yours, and then also feeling body stuff too, like, getting a sudden pain in your head or like a tickle on your arm or something like
The
that.
butterflies in your stomach,
The
maybe? Yeah.
butterflies in your
Yeah,
stomach.
that's a good
Yes, we
one,
have
yeah.
what are the other ones? Oh, we have claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and that's just the gut feeling of like, "Oh, I know what this is." I
Mm,
feel like, when we're talking to our family who's deceased, I feel like most of us who, like, probably when your grandpa was coming through, you
yeah.
probably knew, like, "Oh, that's grandpa." You just know sometimes.
Oh, we'll get into that in the show. With it was actually done with equipment.
Oh,
So
even
we'll get to
better. I
that.
love
Yeah,
that.
we're gonna have some fun. So, yeah, so the
I
clairs.
love that. And
Mm,
then what are the ones? Oh, and then Claire Gustance and Claire Aliens. I feel like much like in with our primary senses. So Claire Gustance is clear taste, and Claire Aliens is clear smell, like inner smell. And so taste and smell, ghost smells, ghost tastes. For
mm,
a year, I'd never really experienced those, and so I would go into haunted spaces, or with like when I was doing my own practice, I'd say, send me a message through a smell or a taste. And that was a terrible decision because a lot of times it's disgusting.
yeah.
But those are the six clairs, and then they layer up with our five primary senses, and we really have 11 senses that we can tap into when we're doing this work.
Yeah, so and again, it takes, we're conditioned to think we've got 5 senses,
Mhm.
whereas there are so many more. So, people wanting, like, I'd like to go to grieving. I actually did a whole
Mhm.
show on this at one time
Yeah.
because a lot of people who
Yeah.
used to message me were people who were grieving, who got themselves into some really deep trouble because
Mhm.
people want that sign, that one sign so desperately, but they don't always think about where it comes from.
Yep.
Whereas if it happened naturally,
Mhm.
right? So can we talk about that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I want to give a shout. I've forgotten her name, and it drives me crazy because she was so wise. She's a medium that's in the Denver area. I'm in Colorado,
Mhm.
and she had interviewed me on a podcast that she hosted years ago. And she talked about how that she'd been doing this work for like 50 years, and she just had so much knowledge and so much wisdom and was so kind. Her name's Barbara something or other. And she talked about how when people are in really deep grief, it is so hard because you're desperate for those signs. And sometimes people that didn't maybe know your loved one as well, they're getting the signs, and you wonder, why isn't that happening for me? And she
Yeah.
described it as grief basically putting us in like a concrete bunker. It's just like
Mm.
surrounding us in this wall that the signs might be trying to get to us, but we can't perceive them. And she gave the example that when you're in deep grief, you almost have to rely on like she called it the weird people, Like when
Yeah,
like you're at the grocery store
yeah.
and the guy who's like, scanning your groceries says something that your loved one would have said or tells you a story that just feels out of the blue, and that sometimes that's how those messages can come through. And you're right, they tend to come organically, and it's hard when they don't maybe have any training about safety and preparation and closing things down, and they're gonna turn to that spirit board, or they're gonna bust out, they're gonna maybe get some paranormal equipment and just see what happens. And there's always gonna be nasty things that are looking for vulnerability, just like there's last nasty people that look
Yeah,
for
yeah.
vulnerability. Spirits can be the same way.
Mhm,
And so, um personally, and that I think was one thing I tried to take care with in the little book of spirit communication, was talking a little bit about how you can recognize signs and
mhm.
also remember that not everything is a sign. How you can do this work yourself, but like, I mean, I will die on this hill that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The way that you have to know yourself, you have to check in with yourself, you need to practice grounding and doing some preparation, like protection work. You got to be really clear in your focus of who you're reaching out to and why. I think ancestor veneration can be really helpful because you're, kind of building your spiritual court can help to keep you safe, because there's good spirits out there too that want you to be safe, and so you can tap into that. Um, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this,
Mhm.
and also I'll probably stop I'll stop there because otherwise I'll
Oh,
just keep rambling.
I actually don't mind that because I think right now, there's so many people who are
Yeah,
suffering losses,
yeah,
and we're in an age where you have I think folks are awakening to this sort of stuff. They realize there's more to it.
mhm,
Um, Now I will pose this question to you. For myself, I've had people who would come to me and say, like, "I wanna contact a loved one." I don't do readings, I don't do things
mhm,
like that. I've always
yeah,
just kept it in the field, and only because I learned the hard way with,
mhm,
back when I was 18, my very best friend in the whole world says, "I need to know if my boyfriend's cheating on me." Me, being her wingman, goes, "Yes," right? Without thinking, ooh, she tried to take her own life at that
oh,
point, and so I realized, I'm gonna go into the Spider-Man thing, with great power comes great responsibility,
yeah, it does.
to which I did not. I was being her friend instead of showing due diligence and saying, "No, you can't say this to her because you don't know."
Yeah,
Right, and that just comes with being unseasoned. So
mhm,
I chose at that time, like, and it's
mhm,
not like I haven't had a person in front of me, and then you have this, like, spirit nagging you, say it." I'm just like, "Oh, right," and I just blurt something out, or I'll ask, "Can I give you this message?" Because you really apparently are supposed to ask, and when cases like this happen and they just
mhm,
fly out of nowhere,
yeah,
and so for me, I've always kept it within the field
yeah,
of research, and that's why I've left it. But,
yeah,
do you find if you give those messages too soon that it can throw them in a deeper state of grief? Because
yeah.
I
So
always refused.
I am not one. You will never catch me, even if I see something, real hairy, if I see something that it's like, "Ooh, that doesn't look good," or, "Ooh, it feels like there is something that's here." You're never gonna catch me being that person who's like, because there's nothing that pisses me off more than when somebody winds up in my seat and they're like, "Yeah, this person showed up to me, like, came up to me at the grocery store," and
No.
they're like, "Excuse me, I'm a medium, and I just think you should know that there's this black mass that's hanging around you," and that what that does to, and there's a lot, so anyone listening, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Because that really sticks with people, and it can and if thinking back to like agregores and the power of our minds and the Philip
Mm,
experiment, if you walk around for 3 years thinking there is a black mass that is siphoning your energy, what the heck do you think you're going to create? Like there's like curses and spirit attachments. Sometimes the call comes from inside the house, and that's a whole other conversation.
mhm,
So a lot of my background of being an advocate and walking with people through some of the worst things that a human can experience. I mean, parents whose children have been murdered, people who have lost, I mean, just unimaginable things. That and having to learn a lot about ethics and how do you support people appropriately? Where do you know the limits of your own, of what is and is not appropriate? A lot of that is translated pretty directly into the work that I do now. And so
Mm.
a big part of the mediumship that I work is I always let people know the only thing that I can promise is that I will try my hardest. My job is to relay what I perceive with as little of my ego getting in the way as possible. Sometimes that also sometimes is like I always feel like I'm a facilitator or a translator. And
Mhm.
sometimes that involves having to figure out, even though I'm trying to keep my ego out of it, sometimes I do have to figure out how to soften things that I
Mm.
am perceiving, because just because somebody dies, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are an evolved, good, and kind person.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's really hard when sometimes someone comes in and they want to hear a specific thing, and that's not what I'm perceiving. Having to tell somebody, I wish I could tell you I wish I could tell you exactly what you want to hear, but that's not what I'm getting, and my job is to be
Oh,
honest. That
yes.
is a hard, but also you can do that kindly.
Yes,
Again, it's like it's a tightrope,
it
man. Like,
is.
it is a tightrope. And my biggest thing is that I always want people to feel better, even if they don't get what they want. My goal is for people to come in knowing that we did our best work and to leave feeling a little bit better than they did coming in. And also
Mhm.
for them to leave knowing you can do this on your own. I always make sure people are, I mean, they're like in it with me. We ground together. We are in it together. And I always remind them, take what we did today. And if it feels right and it feels comfortable and it feels safe, give it a try, you
Mhm.
know? And
I
so
agree.
it's a
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah. I think it's important, to reiterate that people have a choice, because I think there are people who do this who will kinda string you along.
Mhm. Oh, and may I also say, okay, there's a couple other things that, like, I just wanna put it like, things that I
You
won't
go
do.
ahead. Yes.
I I'm pretty good. I will create boundaries with people because sometimes, like, especially with, people that have experienced a real deep personal loss,
Mhm.
somebody comes in and then they book again for the next month. I will tell them no. I will say I will either refund your money
Yeah,
or we can maybe hold this and you can let's rebook your appointment out maybe 3 months or 6 months.
yeah.
I used to have, like, really firm rules of I will not speak with the spirit right after they have crossed, but then sometimes there are situations where that has been helpful in healing, and so I try to, like, every situation is a little different. I will not do sessions where someone comes in and they're, like, fascinated with, like, a true crime story, and they want to,
Oh, yes.
they're like a
Yes.
child, who was murdered or something, and like, I just feel
Yeah.
really connected with their story and I wanna see if we can reach out. Absolutely not.
No.
That doesn't feel good. So
No.
there are some things that I just will not do, and there are
Mhm.
boundaries. Like, if I feel like somebody is, because you can get kinda lost in the sauce with this work. And I feel like
Mhm.
you see that with paranormal too.
Mhm.
You can get
Yeah.
you can get kind of addicted to the experience, and you have to know how to, like, have fun with it, and it's
Mm.
okay to chase it a little bit because it can
Mhm.
be really fun.
Mhm.
And then there are also times that are just funny, like, sometimes, like, oh my god, this is, like, where, like, partners or spouses will, like, come through, and there have definitely been times where I'm like, I'll, like, say something, "Why do I see this image?" And they'll just the client will just start laughing, and they're like, "Oh, that's a sexual thing." And I'm like, "I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know." Or
La,
there
la,
have
la,
been
la,
times
la, la,
where a
la.
message will come through, and I'm like, and I
Yeah,
will flat out say, "I am not saying that." And I'll just be
yeah.
like, "This person misses certain aspects of your relationship, but I am not gonna say that." And it's really
That's
those can just be funny. Like, those can be really funny
yeah,
moments.
yeah. I you know what? Much like yourself, with people who have wanted to come forward too soon, you know, I think they also have to realize that there are
Mhm.
pros and cons to that. That's like you say. I think the cons, because I've seen it happen, where the people I've been brought in to help were going and doing readings, and they were being strung along, and the information, it became more devastating. I had this one woman who messaged me, and she said, you need to hear this. You need to listen to my answering machine. Luckily, she was only like 15 minutes away, because I had a year and a half waiting list at one point for me to be in person, just to research the
Yeah.
location, because it's the type of thing that the type of activity that I guess I was educating myself in, because I don't believe
Yeah.
like in experts, right? So anyway, I go in there, and it was this horrific growly, "You're a effing C and blah blah." She goes, "I need to know if that's my husband." I'm like, "I don't know. Did he like you?" Like, I just don't think this is him.
Like,
Like,
yeah, how was your marriage?
I know. Like, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that was a common sense thing. But it's like when you are in a state of grief, I
Mhm.
mean, this situation was, some
Mhm.
families just lock down everything. Vehicles get locked down, new vehicle gets purchased because they have the smell. I've encountered that a
Mhm.
few times. The smell like my loved one, and I don't want to lose it. But the woman in question went on to start doing her own recordings in the house, and things amplified and amplified and
Yeah.
amplified, and it got out of control. So that's another form that you talk about, the EVPs.
Yeah.
So, do you want to get into the type of things that people, if you don't feel you have access to a proper medium, or you're not a medium yourself, they go
Mhm.
to external sources.
Mhm.
So, can we talk about that?
Yeah. So, okay, just to like button up like the grief conversation, like if you
Yes.
are like really in the thick of grief and loss, like please, gr- process the grief first. Like
Yeah.
do, and the only way out with, and I say this as someone like, my dad died a real traumatic death when I was like a week before my 23rd birthday. I've had a
Mm,
lot of friends who died like way before their time. And then also just the experience of, being with people where it's one of those moments there, but for the grace of God go I, like, where it's like, you walk with people. And so grief is tough, and some griefs, they can sink you. Get, do whatever you have to do, process it, whether it's with friends, with loved ones, with a grief counselor, processing grief, because the reality is you're the one that's still here. You're the one who is still here. Your loved one is okay. They are somewhere else, and the mediumship and the spirit experiences that can come later, but you're going to have a way better time and probably get more out of it
mm,
when you aren't like kind of just crumbling to the floor. So that is like the one last little thing there. Now, for folks who are ready, maybe to start taking some steps, or also like ready to start looking at like, this house does not look like it would be a haunted, in air quotes, haunted house. It's like built in the 50s. It's like this cute little mid-century modern thing. This has been the best training ground I could have ever had. There's more stuff going on in this house than I don't know if I'm ever going to get the full story of what the heck is happening here. It's so fun. So sometimes maybe you just want to know what the heck is going on in your house.
mhm.
I will be perfectly honest, I've had pretty limited success with EVPs, except once. Oh my God. So I wish I could share this one publicly, but I was recording how sometimes you find yourself recording and then you see a sign saying no video recording. So
Yes.
I was in Salem, and I was at the witch house, and I was there for an event, and I was volunteering for an event that was going to happen in the witch house, which was, the home of one of the hanging judges. And so I had the privilege of getting to be there after hours in the room that the judge's children would have stayed in. And so
Mm,
I'm just taking some pictures and I'm taking some video with my cute little like vlogging camera, thinking, oh, I'll get a little B-roll of my trip so I can share on social media. And later, I'm back home in Colorado. This is weeks later, and I'm looking, and I was like, oh crap, I wasn't supposed to be taking video. That's okay. They're just for me. And so I'm looking at my videos weeks later, and I hear this really loud whisper that says, "Hi, I
ah.
see you." I thought my hair, like I was like the bride of Frankenstein all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
then I shared it with a couple of like showed it to a couple close friends, and they're like, and there's children's voices that you can hear too.
Mm,
So again, I just got to saying I never get good EVPs. I've gotten one really, really good
A
one, and
class A as well,
a
which is
class
nice.
A, and I can't
Yeah,
share it. I can't share it publicly
yeah,
unless I get permission from them, which maybe I'll have to ask if I can. Maybe I'll have to ask if
yeah,
I can.
yeah.
But I mean, just the fact that we have, like, our smartphones that have voice recorders and that have, videos. I think the one thing that I have found is, and again, this is like what I try because I know it's best practice is when you're trying to get those voices, go and like listen right away because you don't want to. If I had been actually trying to get an EVP, I probably wouldn't have gotten it. But boy, do
Mm.
I wish that I had seen that in the moment. So then I could have been like, who's here? Who's here?
Exactly,
Oh my gosh.
exactly,
So what like, would
exactly.
you have any suggestions from, like, for EVPs? Because that's something I'm still working on that one myself.
My best success has come from just having conversations, either with the family or walking around and just conversing.
Yeah.
I now don't get me wrong, I've had locations where I was in a castle at one point, and I had dropped recorders all over the place. Incredible stuff came from them because we're left alone. When you're asking questions, try to get an idea of a time period and how you're vocalizing. And
Yeah.
I'll give you one example is just Wayne in chat. He and his girlfriend at the time were at an old fort, and she had this big camera with a long lens. I said Canon, and something tried to slap it out of her hand. Luckily, it was on a lanyard because it would
Yeah.
have gone. So, if you're dealing with Victorian spirits, try to speak, like you would in Victorian times. If you're saying, "Is anybody here?" You're going to if you have a spirit that doesn't realize they passed, they're gonna look at you and go,
Yeah.
what do you want about? Like, you have to be diligent, like, aware of how you're asking your questions. Not everything is status quo, like with,
Uh-huh.
"Is anybody here?" "What are you doing?" It's just like, "Well, I'm standing here looking at you asking me if I'm here." Like,
Uh-huh.
but
I
my
often find like so one of the things that I always tell like my students and that I, approach because I teach mediumship and then for people that have studied with me who we all have like you have to have gone through a 7-week program and so we all have like a baseline of experience together and then I host an annual retreat called Beyond the Veil and so
Nice.
we rent out a haunted place and we go and have a good time for 72 hours and we learn the history of the town and we have like paranormal night which we'll do like 5 to 6 hours of Estes method sessions, which are just so fun, and we always have people going up in twos. So, because it's so fun when you have people kinda going back and forth and there's, like, spirits that are having a conversation. It just is so fun.
Mm,
And we always talk about the importance of, like, be a sparkling conversationalist and go in, like and the more lighthearted you are, the more you tend to attract those spirits that also wanna have a good time. And
mm,
so, knowing about the music of the different periods, like so I had an event in 2024 at the Stanley the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. And it was at the Lodge, which is right, it's like it looks like a mini Stanley hotel and it's right next to the main hotel.
yeah,
The Stanley is one of it's like a very famous haunted location in Colorado for folks who maybe aren't familiar with it. Stephen King very famously got his inspiration for the book The Shining in room 217. And the Stanley shows up. Like, and the thing that was just so funny is music is really important there because they have a concert venue. And so we like through the spirit box sessions or just the like straight up mediumship channeling that we were doing. I love using just because we're talking about equipment too.
yeah.
I if I had to just have one thing, a pair of copper dowsing rods are probably my favorites
I've got
because
them. Yeah, they're
they're
great.
yes, no, and they can
Yeah,
point. Like, you can be like, "Show
yeah,
me where's the best place to go," communicate with someone who wants to talk. But if I can have all the things,
yeah,
I love a REM pod, love a REM
yeah,
pod. I
yeah.
really love the dead bell that was made by Ghost Stop. That thing is so fun because it seems like it's not like weird to
Mhm.
spirits of a lot of different generations. And also there's nothing more cheerful than this little bell just going ding.
Yeah.
And I love tracer lights. And also
Mhm.
I love balloons because if everyone is super still and you just like, hey, can somebody go move that balloon? And you see it just go, vroom. That is,
Right.
oh,
And it's
it's so
basic, right?
good. It's so
Yeah,
good. So at the
yeah.
Stanley, we had the Dead Bell and the REM pod, and we were asking, and we had people that were doing Estes, method spirit box sessions, where that is where somebody's listening to an SB7 spirit box. They're blindfolded, they've got headphones on, so they can't hear the questions that are being asked. And song recommendations kept coming through. So we ended up having like a playlist that we created for the spirits. And because we kept telling them this is kind of like our annual party. And then we always cap it off with a big seance, and we would say, do you want to come back to our party? And so we played the songs that they had requested.
Mm.
It was wild. It was just wild.
Yeah.
But again, like and they also wanted to talk about there were all these like things about wanting to talk about finances, wanting to talk about politics, wanting to
Oh,
talk about
crazy.
music. And it
Yeah.
was really interesting because it was like, oh, you all are paying attention to what's going on here. And you're invested too. And so my favorite question to ask is, do you have any advice for us that are living in this timeline based on what you lived through? And that can be really interesting.
Yeah, I bet it can. I bet it can, because I've had spirits warn me about things.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, like, and I am a fan of ITC because I've had really good experiences with it, and I think, if you factor in that you can take anything you want out of it, you have to be careful. When you talk about music, I remember being at a location, a home, I mean, it was just out nowhere. Like, if you had, like, one radio station for it to grab from, and I used the AM, that's all it was at the time,
Yeah.
and they said, "Well, the spirit here loves music." So I would say, "Oh, can you I wanna hear some of the King, Elvis," right? And Elvis came through, and I says, "What about Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra?" And then it came in with Frank Sinatra. I went with different genres of music. Now, chances are if you
Yeah.
have one radio station in the area, because 'cause you're out in the country, you're gonna get one genre of what that station plays at that specific time. And all of these different every time I would put out a type of music,
Yeah.
and they would essentially give me that. But, I mean, I've had incredible experiences. I knew Frank Sumption. I have a Frank's box, an
That's
original
so
Frank's
cool.
box. Oh,
I
well,
live
here
like it's so funny, I live just a few miles away from where he lived in
yeah,
Colorado,
that's
so
funny.
that's so neat. He seems like he was just such a fascinating man.
He was. I mean, I was really getting to know him. He was a best friend of a friend of mine, and,
Mhm.
he messaged me, and he started sharing all of these, his recordings with me. He sent me a whole bunch of them,
That's so cool.
and he goes, "Here's the thing," he goes, "Everybody thinks I built this to talk to ghosts." He goes, "I built it to talk to aliens."
Aliens. Yeah.
And I laugh because it goes back to, Nikola Tesla being the one who designed the first one, and he called them, I'm talking to Martians." I was like, "Way to go."
Oh my
Right?
god. Yes, and anyway, sorry, I'm getting very excited.
No,
I have
you
so
go,
many
you
questions.
go, you go. Your
No,
turn.
I so
Yeah.
that's one of the questions that I have, because one of the things that I've heard about the Frank's box is that it jumps over that he didn't want it to be, linear, is one of the things that I
Yeah,
read so he wanted to make sure that it wasn't just that where it's sweeping through in a linear fashion,
yeah,
and that he figured out how to make it jump around.
yeah.
And I feel like that's a whole other layer, because when we were at the Stanley in particular, there was one moment where it was so cool. We had these two sisters that they were doing the Estes method together, and they're holding hands. Like, I have some great video of them. It was just like one of those moments where it's like, this is so just iconic. It's like the tracer lights are going off and the fireplace is crackling in the background, and these two sisters holding hands. It was
Yeah.
precious. But they started channeling something that didn't feel like a person. And we even asked, "Are you don't feel like a person?" And we started getting this advice about the need to come together, and that there's a need to come together, to work together to solve problems. And it was like the room just got like we're all just like, I'm getting goosebumps just
Yeah.
even like remembering it.
Mhm.
And I think that happens more, and you can feel the difference sometimes. So have you ever talked to an alien through the Frank's
Many
box?
times, many times.
So cool. Oh
I've
my God.
had not specifically Frank's box. Before I knew Frank, I had one designed for me that would have been an equivalent or upgraded, and
Yeah.
you could fine tune it. You could do all kinds of things that Frank
Yeah.
didn't have in his. And I also had another piece built few many years after that, and I can work them together, work on reverse speech. I've had incredible even EVPs in reverse speech, all kinds of things. But
Yeah.
with aliens, we tested this because I had, a friend of mine being a remote viewer. I said, I need you to tell me what is as this experiment because I'm on the box. Like I can't be, yourself. You can
Yeah.
only, you want to be able to be in that moment. And at one point, I mean, all this time I was hearing this clicking and clacking, and
Yeah.
I'm going, I've thought, I'm like, it sounds like a gray, and I had a guest on the show who went, no, those are actually mantis. Mantis will click like that. I'm like,
Mhm.
right? The
Sorry, I'm
clicking,
getting so exciting.
like things like that,
Yes.
right? And I've got these recorded, like I record everything. And at one
Wow.
point, something really growly came through at one point, and you know, she says that's actually a reptilian. And they
Mhm.
start talking, and they're very gruff. But
Yeah.
and at first I'm like, nobody's talking to you. Because you just be like, they're very, very like in your face, like they don't care
Yeah.
what's going on. So that was a bit of a lesson taking the back seat, but it goes to show how when you're hearing all the growlies, how many people think, oh, that's a demonic. And meanwhile, it was a reptilian.
That is so interesting. And it's funny too the way that so I have my fancy schmancy spirit box that is the fussiest thing that I've ever it, it works when it wants to work. It has its own personality, but it's a geoport that George Brown built. And I
They're
love
cool.
oh my
Yeah.
God, they're so cool. And this thing
Yeah.
is like, it is so persnickety. When it doesn't want to work, it will not work. But when it does, like I have to treat it like it has its own spirit. But when it will come through, I heard this. I mean, it'll speak in very like full sentences. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, unbelievably clear.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've always wondered is, I don't know, I'm so curious about just like the different ways you could soup up the radio frequencies to try to like figure out how to get to tune into different types of spirits. I have so many
Yeah.
questions. Oh my God,
Go
but that's
crazy,
probably
go crazy, go crazy. It's a conversation. So yeah,
well, okay,
get
let me
going.
do you know how to like tune those radios yourself? Like how did you teach yourself how to do that? And if so,
Well,
how did
I
you
don't
learn?
I don't know a geo. That's like I'm not like I'm familiar with it
Uh-huh.
because but he had such a long waiting list out because I was ready to get one at that point, but they
Oh,
evolved so quick. I was like, wow. The pieces that I had built, one of them, I mean, I think there's only like two in the country,
yeah.
and but I feel they're definitely worth it. I feel the best thing you
Yeah.
could do is not use an app.
Oh God.
Be
Yeah.
because
Mm,
because now you're out in the ether, who knows what you're going to get, right? But some of them are pretty fine-tuned. I mean, these phones are like computers now, so
I
some of them
know.
are technology, some of them are pretty good. The
Yeah.
AI thing concerns me, so that would deter
That's the one
me,
that gets me too. Mhm.
right? But the box that I had built, the
Yeah.
original Spirit box, it worked on both AM and FM when I had it built. But it's got all these dials on it, so you could slow the pitch down completely so it's not scanning as fast.
Yeah.
I basically said, "This is what I need this device to do," and that's how it was built for me.
That's so cool. Yeah, the one thing that I would love to experience is that jumping from frequency to frequency where it's not linear just to
Yeah,
see what that experience is because,
that's
I
Frank's
love
box.
I love listening to the people that, coined that came up with the process in
Mhm,
Estes Park, Colorado, Connor Randall and Carl Pfeiffer. I love listening to interviews with them about this
mhm.
that they refer to it as technologically assisted mediumship. And that really is like how it, because you can get really desperate when you're like trying to grab those little snippets. And sometimes you get gold, like you do get those
You
snippets of like
do.
actual words and things. But then sometimes it's almost like it just flips something in your brain and you start
Mhm,
getting those full, again, all your clairs start kicking in. You get the images and the full stories and and it like opens up something different. And
mhm.
I'm just so curious about how. how that might look different if it wasn't just that linear kind of steady, you
I've
know.
used both because Frank's box, I mean, I had someone I knew gave me a lot of readings through the
Yeah,
original Frank's box, the very first one.
yeah,
And I'll tell you something, the path that it put me on,
yeah,
I mean, it was nicknamed the telephone to the dead, and it was. My
yeah,
grandfather, when he finished, and now bear in mind, it was used with the help of a guide,
yeah.
and but he'd say, "Thanks for calling, call again."
Oh, that's so cute. I
I
love
know, it was
that.
hilarious, but he set me on my path to lineage through Frank's box, and he basically
Oh,
I said, "Did you put that on my PVR?" Like, because nobody in the house knew how something got on my PVR, and he goes, "Now she gets it." Like, it got very sarcastic, and but you heard it clear as day. It was
yeah,
insane, and that's the jumping, right? Because it's a Frank's box and
yeah.
not linear, and you could hear a full sentence, "Now she gets it,"
Now
and then I
she
was
gets it.
yeah. And I was I've traveled a lot, so
Mhm.
I was going to Romania this specific year. And he goes, "What about France?" Says, "Grandpa, I'm not going to France this time. I'm going to Romania." And he goes, "You need to go to France because huge lineage. Like I have Templar lineage, so it starts off in different parts." And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "I will get to France." Then he sends me on this place that he put on the PVR, and he goes, "Don't go in the winter because it'll be too hard. You need to go underground." The hell do you think I am, Indiana Jones? Give me a dang lottery, then I'll do it. Like, it's just funny.
Oh
There's
my
the
gosh, that's so funny.
it was, but he was serious, that's the thing,
Mhm.
and but anyway, this whole lineage thing and past life thing, all this stuff came out. I'm in Lilydale, they do a spirit painting.
Mhm.
What comes up? All of this stuff, and it was like they're like 3, 4-hour sessions, right? Because you're getting the painting done, but
Yeah,
I would do these cycles for validation
yeah,
for years, and it was all there. So Frank, I mean, the story I heard was that he was, shortwave radio operator as well. So he had a
mhm.
very good understanding
Mm,
of
mhm.
how all of that worked, as well as doing all these repairs, as you made mention.
Yeah,
Like he understood how it worked, and he
so
was
cool.
so humble. I would say, let me send you gift cards or something because you need to buy all of these components, or let me send you something. No, 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 don't do that. He just, you know, but he had such a big order list. Like there was only so many of them ever made. I think a couple of hundred
Yeah,
in his time.
yeah.
Um, and so I finally did it through my friend. I just said, "Look, here's some money. Just go buy him." Like, because he liked jewelry box cases. Everything was wood. So
That's so cool. That's so cool, Michelle. I love that.
yeah, it was really great to know somebody like that. But the consensus, of course, when you talk about all of these different beings that could
Yeah.
be coming through on your reading, what has been your experience with that in communication?
Oh, goodness. Where can I even where to even start with that? So, I think that, like, when I'm doing, like, one-to-one sessions, those are so focused, and we put in so much intention, and now, can I say that there's been some weird stuff that will come up where it's like, "Didn't expect that, never saw that before." Absolutely. But I think, oftentimes, like, with, like, client work, I feel like sometimes I'm stepping into a conversation that's already halfway done, because it's like, usually it's like a spirit that's been, people will come in and say, "I think someone is trying to reach out to me," and we ground, we do all the things, we open it up, and it's like, "Yep." So sometimes, like, those tend to be pretty classic spirit of the dead. I will say some of the harder sessions, client sessions, are when people will come in and say, "I want to talk with a guide," because guides are so personal to us and the way they manifest is so
Mhm.
personal.
Yeah.
And so the way that, like, your guide might present to me might be very, very different because they don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to you, you know? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so those can be a little tricky. I think, spirits of the land, like land-based spirits, and learning about, like, folklore, and also just being very respectful, and, maybe I personally don't get too chummy with land-based spirits or house spirits. There's a lot of lore and a lot of kind of traditions around not offending them and yet also being grateful for them, feeding them, but not paying them so much attention that you upset them. We've had some wild experiences in this house. Like my son, myself, we've all had some really interesting sightings in this house that feel more kind of land-based energies. And also too, like, I have a real love of like old mining towns. And so there's like some of the legends and the lore of the stuff that goes on in the mines and the connection with like the minerals and the I was just in Bisbee, Arizona this past year with a group of students. We loved it so much we're going back. Everybody go to Bisbee. And the influence of because it's a copper mining town. And so like copper is a conduit. Copper is it's a Venusian metal. Yeah, the copper I feel like makes Bisbee a very interesting place. Probably the most extreme, what I would call like residual haunting. Oh yeah, Cripple Creek. Fun fact, Cripple Creek it's 5 miles away from a town called Victor, Colorado. Victor is a ghost. It is a ghost town. That's the first place I ever had a retreat. It is People in Victor, they want to keep it a ghost town too. I've never been anywhere that was so determined to like not want to let you come in and spend money to support their small businesses because they're like, just go away. We don't want anyone here. Haunted place. And it's just 5 miles away from Cripple Creek, which is really like leaned into their haunting and their folklore and all that stuff. But in Bisbee, there was I took my crew on a ghost tour, and we had this wonderful, wonderful tour guide. And one point she just stops talking because we hear like the blare of a train. And so we're like, oh, I was like, where are the train tracks? And she just says, there is no train. Train hasn't run through in years. And there were like 20 of us that heard this, and it was loud. So, and I'm just like, I wonder if the copper kind of like amplifies that. I lived in Wyoming, rural Colorado, and New Mexico. So a lot of like UFO sightings, especially my mom has had more than I have. And so I think there's definitely some weirdness that goes on.
I could fill you in on some around the four corners, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then, there's the darker stuff. I'd be lying if I said that there isn't. I do believe that, malevolent beings that have never been human, aka demons, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also they're on a spectrum. There are some that they really do want to ruin your life, and then their ends or take, own your life. And then there's some that are just kind of more of a nuisance and everything. And then I love cryptids. I just believe in it all. I'm open to it all.
It all comes around full circle, doesn't it? Like they're all connected.
Yes. And I think that's one of the things that always drives me nuts is like how siloed we get. The paranormal people don't talk to the witches, and the witches don't talk to the ufologists, and the, cryptozoologists aren't talking to the mediums. And it's just, I'm like, what if we all have like a puzzle piece of this like great big cosmic thing? And we're like, we could just learn so much if we would just like maybe quit being so snotty to each other.
No, it's true. It's
I'm
true.
crazy.
You know what? 100%. I believe that people who do start out in one field or the other, eventually, if you're a serious researcher, you will see that there are connections to all of it. You can get into I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
The exact similarities between extraterrestrial abduction and demonic infestation, right down to the smells. Abductees have said, no, I smell sulfur and bright lights. Well, that's what people who experience demons will tell you. That's I smell the sulfur, the bright lights, the crackling sounds, seeing like little fireworks static in the atmosphere, sleep paralysis, right? They'll say, oh, in the paranormal, it's like the hag syndrome or something sitting on your chest, and people get the sense of heaviness during alien abductions. And then of course you have all the scientific things that can explain a lot of that. Like, that's just two aspects with one similarity. Like that's how closely connected some of them are. Spirit communication, people who think, I'm talking to a demon. Oh, it was this case, it was a reptilian.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you 100. And then there's, oh my God, I'm like, we could spend another hour and a half just talking about this for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's so many interesting things, but this is what I love about the whole aspect of spirit communication. So,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of a pendulum. You
Yeah.
have to be careful with those, and
Mhm.
we, when we were doing a restoration
Mhm.
of our, our last home, um, it had been changed. The house is 18, 74. I think changes happen between the original family and the process between to the last owners, which at the time,
Mhm.
Wayne had the house. And he said, "I wonder if there's like a door here, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure there is." It just took out the pendulum and it pointed right over and it went, yes, it pointed there. And he found it. And there was a doorway there and it had all beautiful wainscoting woodwork along, and they'd walled it in with live wiring.
Oh.
I know. So, you know what I mean? Like, but that's a way that the spirits are showing you there's something
Mhm.
going on.
Mhm.
So that's pendulum work. And I've also seen things go real bad with families I've helped with pendulums. So,
Mhm. Well, so pendulums, I mean, I think you always have to keep, again, with all of this stuff, you got to keep a good head on your shoulders, right?
yeah,
Like always keep a good head on your shoulders. And that involves, the idiomotor effect is a thing. Your fine muscle skills are, or your fine, little muscles are going to influence how that pendulum is swinging, how your dowsing rods are swinging. And at the same time, like if you are the channel, you are the filter, of course they are, because
mhm,
it's processing through you and that's going to influence how this spins.
like
Now,
dowsing rods.
I will also argue that I think a lot of people, much like with most spirit communication, like devices or tools, like whether it's a spirit board, whether it's pendulums, whether it's, spirit communication devices that have batteries, I think a lot of folks jump in without doing any of the grounding, without like, just, I'm excited. And so I'm just going to jump in and then, oh my gosh, that was cool. And now I got a little scared and I'm just going to throw it in a box. And then they wonder why things are still happening, or they wonder why they're not feeling well, or and I again, it's that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So with, the situation, with maybe things go well and maybe they go poorly with something like a pendulum or dowsing rods,
Mhm.
sometimes I would also wonder, like, what are the other surrounding things for that person? Maybe the person that's working with the pendulum, and finds this really cool doorway. Maybe they were having a really good grounded day. They're just a grounded, stable person. And so for them, and they're also maybe not super emotionally invested in whether or not there's a door there. And so I always talk with my students about like being kind of like a blank canvas. Like you want to be pretty neutral when you're coming into this work, because
Mhm.
otherwise your own stuff gets in the way of the messages. And yet, if you have somebody that maybe they're keyed up and they're already a little frightened, or they're like, maybe they have some other things that are going on, maybe they're not totally sober, right? How many people go, jump into like a ghost hunt and they're a little drunk or they're a little, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. I'm not judging, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you
Yeah.
do have to like,
You get
you
different
have
results.
you're gonna get different results. Like, and if you're going to have a good time with the spirits of the saloon, that actually might be you might have a great freaking time. And next thing you know,
Yes.
you're singing songs and you're getting good stuff on the EVP and stuff like, you're getting all kinds of good things. But if you're like not in a good place and you're trying to learn about something in your house, most of the time you're gonna get something that like maybe validates like your worst fears. Sometimes that can happen. And then that can, I don't know. There's a whole
So could that come just with residual energy being our
Mhm.
own residual energy? Like, if you
Oh,
get
yeah.
into an argument with your significant other and you walk away and come back 2 hours later, you're wondering why you're feeling foul when you're in that spot, chances
Yeah,
are you need to cleanse the space, ground
cleanse the
yourself to
space.
keep your energy focused, one or the other, right?
Oh, absolutely. I teach people to read the tarot, and I have a group of students that, like, they needed like a little tune up. So we're doing like we're meeting for the next 6 weeks, and we're doing some like, just refreshing our practice.
Yeah.
And one of my students had this great example of how she was doing a tarot reading on a day that she felt so good, but The Walking Dead was playing in the background, and her reading was like super dark, didn't match anything. And then she
Yeah.
realized she was basically doing a reading for The Walking Dead, and that it matched what was going on in the show. So she turned it off and like recentered. And then So yeah, so that's so some oh, I love that. I got better results when I was in the dressed in the time period and speaking the vernacular. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I love that. So
Yeah.
fun. So yeah, I do think our own energy, you're right, it is like a residual energy. That's a good way
Mhm.
of putting it.
Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen, for example, spirit boards,
Yeah.
Ouija boards, where people are trying to get things manipulated. And most of the time, and I've tested this theory many times, where
Mhm.
people will say, well, I can communicate with this spirit. And I'm like, okay, test it.
Mhm.
Because it picks up on what you're thinking. That's a manifestation. You have to be so careful. I
Mhm.
had this one young girl, she was convinced that this very malevolent energy in her home cared about her, and I went, "Really?" And I said, "Do you care about so and so?" And in my mind, I said, "Okay, if you don't, just come to me instead." And all of a sudden, like, this thing just came flinging itself at me, and then I said, "Okay, there's the test." And I had again, I'm and how many people think that they are completely in control of these things? I had this adult male who would get drinking, and he said, "I can get this ashtray to do whatever I wanted to. This spirit will do whatever I wanted to."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay, try." And he sat there trying to get this ashtray to come towards him and started to move. All I had to do, Sterling, was I put my hand like this. I didn't say a word. I went like this. It stopped and it came right to me. So I said, "Take it from me." I just said to him, "Just take it from me." And I just went. That thing didn't move. So it's like you can manifest whatever is going on, you could say.
We are so
You have to
much
be
more powerful than
Thank you.
we realize. And I
Yes.
think and I think all of the things that you're saying, I mean, those are like cautionary tales too for everything from the way that we approach maybe things that we suspect are in our home. You always have to be like and may sound like a little funny, coming from someone like me who does what I do. You always do kind of have to, I mean, number one, you always do have to look for what are the mundane things. What are like, it's kind of like one foot in, 1 foot out. And you always have to remember, even though I know what my grandmother's energy feels like, I know. And yet, if my grandma comes to me in a setting, if my grandma, air quotes, comes to me in a setting that I like is kind of unusual, there is an element of like we are kind of doing the equivalent of chatting with people, getting close with someone in like an online space. It's like, the online chat room
Mm,
example. People can say whoever they can present themselves however they want to online. And yet we know catfishing can happen. And
yeah,
so
definitely.
catfishing can happen in the spirit world too. So
Yeah.
I
It
do I do caution, I definitely have had students in the past where they'll have so much fun sometimes with what we do and they'll be like, I want to do that all the time. I want to go back to that place. I want to go talk to that one spirit. And it's like, just sit with
Mhm.
that, because remember, like you don't get too chummy. Like your best friends should be people that are breathing, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
because you again, it's like that you can get lost in the sauce and you have to be careful.
Mhm. I think that's when, we go back into the age of spiritualism.
Uh-huh.
I love Lily Dale. It's the largest spiritual community on
Yeah.
this side of the world. I've encountered and met people who
Mhm.
have the same sort of deal on the other side of the world, but it has a feel about it. The place has a feel about it.
Yeah.
But what is it? Like, and you get into this fascination. Lily Dale, Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Harry
Yeah.
Houdini,
Oh god.
who just wanted so desperately to have his message and never got it. So you wanna talk
Well,
about the Victorians and the spirit at times.
there is also questions though. I mean, that I love the story of how Houdini famously fell out with was it was it Conan Doyle? Sir
I
Conan
think
Doyle, or was
I
it Arthur Findlay? It was one of those 2
it's one of
guys.
those 2 guys,
I
yeah.
think it was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle because he was the founder of the College of Psychic Studies in the UK, and that they had a falling out because Houdini maybe I think it was Doyle's wife did deliver a message, but Houdini was so married to his skepticism that he refused, and they ended up like their friendship exploded. So, you also don't want to like maintain your skepticism, because I think people like to say like, well, I'm a skeptic, because it makes them feel
Mhm.
smart. But if you're like literally the apparition of your grandmother walks in front of you and gives you her secret pie recipe, and then you walk out saying, well, but then that's no good. That's just as bad as somebody who believes every single message, that every song that comes up on their YouTube is a message from their
Mhm.
grandma. Like that's
Mhm.
so sorry. I get a
Yeah.
little, I get a
No,
little
no,
I like to talk a lot of crap about Harry
passionate,
Houdini.
Llewellyn, you're passionate. That's what I
I'm
like.
passionate.
That's right. You're passionate. So, I think that whole movement
Mhm.
really opened doors,
Yeah.
and still does, because everything sort of recycles. Which brings me to the age of AI. Do you know that there is a chat app for people who are grieving, where they can create their loved ones, and some people who just try to create a friend even have created things and opened doors that now they're in trouble. Invitation. Thoughts?
I'm just gonna flat out say I'm pretty, as somebody who's had my work taken and fed into AI models without my consent.
Wow.
So I roll with, I'm an author, right? And I roll
Yeah.
with a lot of artists. I roll with a lot of musicians. It is, those models have been trained on stolen content. And that is something that I have a really hard time moving past.
Mhm.
I worry when I hear people who will just be like, "Oh yeah, I asked chat, or I was talking with chat like it's a friend." And it's like you're giving companies, like when you don't pay for the product, you are the product. You are the, you and so I have a lot of thoughts, feelings, and concerns about AI. I know people who have said that, they have worked with, "Oh, I can talk with my loved one through AI anytime." And it's like, "Are you? Or are you talking with a computer that's programmed to give you what you want to hear?"
Yes.
Much, and that's in the same way too, where look at the lawsuits that have come forward of, people who have taken their own lives, who have gotten really terrible advice because it's a model that's designed to tell you a version of what you want to hear. And I don't think that that's necessarily something that's good for us as a species. And so I would not be, I'm not supportive of the idea of using AI to replace your thinking or for your spiritual journey. That's what
Thank
I'll
you.
say.
Yeah, thank you. This gentleman decided, I'm just going to create, like many of them do. They just create a friend who
Mhm.
basically gives them information, and you know, was
Mhm.
done through like quiet night at work sort of thing. I thought, oh, I'll just do it. And then
Mhm.
things just started going really, really crazy for him after that. And when you finish off,
Mhm.
a conversation saying, I just don't have the energy to fight it, I'm like, something's wrong. Like it's electronic. It's an invitation of sorts for something to come in and
Oh,
create a
yeah.
lot of
Oh,
havoc,
I'm picking up what you're letting down. So it's like
That too,
it's not real,
yeah.
and then it's also a door. It's
It's a
also a
doorway.
door that's
Yeah,
creating a yep, so another layer of fun that could
yeah.
come into the chat.
Yeah, I might need to do part 2.
Part 2. Oh my
Part
gosh. Except I
2.
would need to know if I can swear. That would be the only thing if we
Oh, I know it's tempting.
I know, I know.
I know it's
Uh,
tempting. We can work with some of it, but some of it we can't really.
yeah.
I had Alexandra Holzer on one time, and she just went, "Oh," she goes, "I'm a trucker." Boy, we were trucking, all of us.
You were trucking and you're like, you come from a legendary family,
I
and
know.
I think I might get some complaints after this one.
Oh, she was fun. She was
Oh,
fun,
I bet.
but it was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. After a while, I was like, "Oh my god, I think I just F-bombed on my own show." It's like, very addictive, but,
Uh,
so what do you have coming up? Where can people find you? I'm gonna put this back up right here for
Oh
the
my goodness. Well, I have some shifts in, I'm moving offices, and I've always have new things coming up. So yes, sterlingmoontarot.com is where you can always find what is coming up for me. Starting in the summer, that's when I start announcing my mediumship offerings. And so The most in-depth is my program, Modern Mediums, and that's a 7-week online program. It's through my school, and so we have a really nice community of people. I have I'm starting to do kind of more like one-off events, particularly in
Yes.
the Denver area. I have my Beyond the Veil mediumship and paranormal retreat that I offer. And yeah, I you can just find me there, and all my social media handles are all through the website. It's the best way to keep up with me.
And the book, I have a link to Amazon in the show description along with your website, everything.
Thank
So,
you.
can they get this through the website as well, or is it just strictly through Amazon?
I might need to restock. I might need to restock them, but if you want a signed copy, you can absolutely get that through my website. I know I need to restock my Talking to Spirits, which is the other book that I published with Llewellyn, and I have some self-published things there. I have a spirit deck that I created that will be
Wow.
Kickstarter is coming in a couple months to get that like launched a little bit bigger. I've been hand cutting these decks that are basically a spirit board in deck form, and it's been a really fun tool. I can't believe I forgot to even talk about that, but all of that's on my
Oh.
website.
Aw, all right, guys. So get on over and seek her out because I know her mentioned saying, I would love to do a mediumship course. So this is sort of where you can go to do that because it is online. See,
Yeah.
something for everyone. I have to say thank you so much. I definitely want to do, a follow up on this and keep
Thank you,
going.
Michelle.
Oh, are you kidding? Thank you.
Oh my
It's
gosh, this was really fun.
Oh, thank you. I just love I love always connecting with like-minded people, but there's so many. I mean, we didn't even touch on time slips. There's so much we didn't touch
Oh
on.
my God, yes. Yeah, there's so many and I love your
I
stories. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to all your past episodes because I'm like, this is so
Oh, I
good.
wish I could say I touched more on this sort of stuff, a lot on some of it, but this is kind of going back to my roots a little bit, and it's a lot of
Yay.
fun. So thank you for
Thank you.
indulging me as well. So, and everybody else, thank you guys for being in the chat. You're all so awesome. Tomorrow night. You guys, Morgan Daimler returns and she's going to be talking about her new soon to be released book, The Fairy Courts. And can I tell you what? Like that thing is just going to be an amazing segment because she goes back to the 1500s and talks about Scottish fairies per se. And she's got a million books on fairies and Norse traditions and all kinds of stuff, as you guys know. But she's going to get into just the folklore of it. She's going to get into the fictional stuff of the Scottish fairy courts and their connections and the belief in the connections to demons and witches and so on. And on Thursday night, C.L. Thomas, who is my fellow UPRN host of the Gateway podcast, joins me to talk about haunted Las Vegas. So what's haunting Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. Let's hope. So anyway, thank you all, and we'll see you all tomorrow.